So in the automotive world, the designation RS usually means that there's something special, something extra for the enthusiast. Think Ford Focus RS, Audi RS4, RS6, think the Porsche 911 GT3 RS, for example. Now, I'm not sure if that's what they were going for here with the Sinn. Well, with the new RS version, it's finally got that pop I'm looking for, and that's what makes this watch special. Hey guys, I'm Max and this is Watch Crunch. So this past weekend, I took my new Sinn 556 up to Vancouver, BC. And using the meetups feature on watchcrunch.com, I was able to get a bunch of watch folks together I'd never met before for a hangout. I encourage you to check out this feature, especially if you live in a bigger city. Now that the pandemic is over, why not start talking watches in person? But today we're talking about the Sinn 556. I picked up this one on eBay for like $1,200, slightly used. And the 556 used to be around $1,000 new, but like everything else, the price has climbed up to $1,200, $1,500, $1,600 on a bracelet. Right out of the packaging, the first thing you notice is the straightforward design. With painted markers and a white on black scheme, there is nothing immediately luxurious about this watch, and that makes sense coming from a company founded in 1961 producing cockpit instruments for airplanes. Everything from the classic sword hands, the numerals coated in superluminova, it's about how it conveys the most information in the shortest amount of time to your eyes. But as I mentioned in the intro, I've owned the 556 once and it was just missing something. I mean, I'm not a pilot, and honestly, I've got a healthy dose of fear of heights. And the normal 556 though, with its all brushed case, that monochromatic color scheme was just a little bit stern for my taste. Apparently, all I needed was just a pop of color in the lacquered red hands to liven things up. It draws the eye in and breaks up the monotony. Now I'm going to direct your eyes to the 430. You'll see a teeny tiny date window. Housing a black date wheel, it just vanishes into the background. Honestly, it feels like a bit of an afterthought. I'm imagining that there was like one guy on the design team, we'll call him Hans, who insisted on a date. So to please Hans, they added the smallest, most inconspicuous date possible. Damn you, Hans. So over the years, we've gotten plenty of versions of the 556. The 556i had all hash marks, and the 556a stands for Arabic numerals, has the classic 36912 dial, which is my favorite layout vis-a-vis the Explorer and the Ranger. And Sinn has even jumped on the pastel color trend last year with 4 funky fresh colors. One variant even comes in mother of pearl. On the wrist, the 556 is ideally proportioned at 38.5 millimeters wide with squared off crown guards, shielding a screw down crown that endows it with 200 meters of water resistance. It's also extremely thin for its class at just 11 millimeters, partially thanks to a completely flat sapphire crystal. That's like IWC thin, and that means this watch sits flat on your wrist without the wobbliness that you get with thicker cases. The crystal has also a double coating of anti-reflection on both sides to keep glare at a minimum. This makes this dial extremely clear. I mean, I can't think of a more legible watch. Very important if you're a pilot. And if you buy this watch, I highly recommend sourcing one with the H-Link bracelet. It has a nice taper from 20 down to 18, which means the world is your oyster in terms of straps. Lug holes also make changing straps a breeze. It feels uber sturdy and sort of splits that difference between comfort and refinement given it's all brushed. There's even what looks like a diver's extension. I'm not sure what that's for. Maybe for pilots to wear this watch on the outside of flight suits, I'm imagining. But a couple of small criticisms on the bracelet. Even though it uses screws for fastening, you have 2 hex heads at either side. So unless you work at IKEA for hamsters, it's gonna make you feel like a klutz trying to remove the links. Next, the clasp is stamped. However, due to the use of a generous radius curve on either side, it feels solid. It doesn't feel like a flimsy Seiko clasp. Guys, do me a favor, drop a like for this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay till the end where I will be assigning the Sinn a crunch score and comparing it with other great sort of do-everything watches like the Alpinist, the Aquaterra, for example. So turning the watch around, you get a bit of a surprise. The diehards will curse a pilot's watch with a display case back. They'll say it adds unnecessary height and potentially compromises the water tightness, but this is ironically one of my favorite features on this watch. Let me explain. First, The watch is inspired by a cockpit instrument. It's not actually a cockpit instrument. Once you get a red secondhand, you're in the realm of fashion statements. Second, Sinn is not just displaying a stock movement back here. It's always a bit of a letdown when you get a display case back only to see some shitty, half-decorated, off-the-shelf snooze fest. But here the Sellita SW200 sports a big gold rotor engraved with the word Sinn, and it's got nice Geneva striping on it. It just adds another dash of color to an otherwise kind of drab watch. So the SW200 is essentially the same as the ETA 2824, a Swiss workhorse with a proven record. It runs at 4 Hertz, has 38 hours of power, is adjusted in 2 positions, and it can be expected to operate with plus or minus a dozen seconds per day. The 556 RS is really the whole package in my opinion, and it's one of those like complete watches that doesn't have any real flaws. So let's talk about the crunch score here and give you the breakdown. Now for context, the Alpinist SPB210 got a 35 out of 50, losing points for the lack of a bracelet, a lackluster movement, but 35 is a really good score. I mean, anything above 30 I consider good, anything above 35 is stellar, anything above 40 is extraordinary. For example, I gave the Aquaterra a 41. So on design, I gave the 556 RS an 8.5. It wins with a well-proportioned case, perfectly executed pilot's aesthetics, and it's got its own Sinn flair, pops of color in the red hand, the gold rotor. On fit and finish, it gets a 7.5. It's a bit better than like a Seiko, but not as good as like the latest watches coming out of the Swatch group, like the Longines Spirit. And being all brushed, that helps to hide small imperfections, but you can't hide the fact that it still has a stamped clasp, for example. The movement gets a 7. Pluses are that it's Swiss, it's relatively well finished for the price, they went the extra mile with that rotor, but at the end of the day, it's still just a mass-produced entry-level thing. On history, the watch gets an 8. Sinn has some serious aviation chops, having been founded in the 60s by an aviation engineer. Many Sinn models have also accompanied astronauts into space. Sinn has a number of proprietary technologies like tegmented steel, certain dehumidifiers built into their cases, and that all sort of furnishes this brand with a highly professional air. Lastly, on value, 556 RS gets a full 10. Whether you pick up a slightly used one like I did or wait for a new one at the 2023 prices, this is still, I think, the cheapest way to really check off all the boxes for a little bit more than $1,000. So that gives the watch a grand total of 40.5, easily beating the Alpinist and half a point behind the venerable Aquaterra. But look at all the watches above 40. They all cost multiples of the Sinn, and that I think is the price proposition here. Guys, can you think of a better one watch collection? Let's continue the conversation on watchcrunch.com. I'll put a link in the pinned comments below. As always, stay crunchy. I'll see you in the next one.